Greetings from Costa Rica. I hope you're doing well. This is Matt Rosensteel with Coldwell Banker Pacific Realty, as always broadcasting live from Playa Junquillal, Guanacaste, just south of Playa Tamarindo. Tonight, our topic is the rainy season here in Costa Rica, and specifically Guanacaste, because that's where my experience is based. Really, I want to give an overview of Costa Rica weather in general and try and give you a realistic perspective on, first of all, what the rainy season is really like and how it varies or can vary from year to year. I also want to give you some general tips for surviving and thriving in the rainy season. I want to talk about building a home that will do well in Guanacaste's rainy season. I also want to talk about one of my favorite topics, controlling erosion, because that's absolutely critical. And finally, I want to talk about preparing your property as you enter the rainy season. If you haven't already done so, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you like relevant information about moving to Costa Rica. You know, I used to call it the hump day chat here on Wednesday evening. I'm here every Wednesday live. Obviously, the hump day sort of feeling has kind of this doom and gloom. Oh, we're just barely making it through the week. I want you all to start thinking of Wednesday as the pinnacle of your week, because we get together for these live Costa Rica chats with myself, Costa Rica Matt. Again, tonight's topic is the rainy season. We're going to touch on weather in general, specifically in Guanacaste, and go over a lot of fun things to help empower you as someone who's interested in moving to or investing in Costa Rica, to enjoying the rainy season rather than having it be problematic for you. Today, I'm happy to announce this isn't my new intro video, but we do have a new channel video that I want to show in lieu of the normal content here. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, and stay tuned. Greetings from Costa Rica. My name is Matt Rosensteel, also known as Costa Rica Matt. This is my YouTube channel where I talk about everything related to moving to Costa Rica. Greetings from Costa Rica. Welcome to my new exclusive listing here in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. Here in Costa Rica, in Playa Junquillal, Playa Tamarindo, Costa Rica, real estate, a pura vida lifestyle. What the heck? Just kidding. So whether you're interested in buying real estate in Costa Rica or you just want to learn more about this beautiful country, do be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks very much for watching. And thanks very much to Stefan, my videographer, for producing that lovely intro to my channel. Before we get to the weather tonight, I just wanted to say, again, as of June, I'm now with Coldwell Banker Pacific Realty. If you want to get in touch with me about buying real estate, specifically in Guanacaste, be sure to email me at matt@cbpacificrealty.com. We have an absolutely crack team waiting for your messages and calls. Operators are standing by.
Yes, I'm here. Okay. Oh, okay.
So let's start talking about Costa Rica weather and specifically the rainy season here in Guanacaste. If you haven't already seen my overview of the weather, generally speaking, the rainy season in Guanacaste starts up in May and goes through November or December. From December through April, we have a very dry season that's actually what distinguishes Guanacaste from the rest of the country. A lot of people might imagine that as a tropical country, and when you hear the term rainy season, they picture deluges and constant torrential levels of rain like they might have seen in Jurassic Park or, various movies that have set up a misrepresentation. Guanacaste is part of the dry tropical forest. This region is very well known for that sharp contrast between the dry and rainy season. And what happens is that our rainy season is really the least intense out of all of Costa Rica. If you don't want to deal with those deluges, those torrential downpours, Guanacaste is your best bet. And I'll ask Danielle to bring up the rain map of the country here so you can get an idea of an overall dynamic as to how much rainfall falls throughout the country. And what you see is that, generally speaking, as you go further south and east, you get higher annual rainfall. Now, this is just a generalization with sort of a 20-year moving average of what rain falls in Guanacaste. And you can see that in most of the province, we average 60 to 80 inches of rain per year. Now, that might sound like an absolute ton of rain. I think that Hawaii, the rainiest US state, only gets about 60 inches year after year. Really, though, what you have to consider is that huge amounts of that 60 to 80 inches can fall in a couple of large storms throughout the year. So generally speaking, in Guanacaste, our rainy season will feature very light rain from May through June, July, and then a little bit of August. September and October then are usually those absolutely wet months where you see week after week of rainy conditions at times. Now, there's some huge variability to this depending on a lot of bigger global climate factors. And a lot of people, if you're in Guanacaste right now, they're saying, light rain in May and June? Are you kidding me? And they're absolutely right. This particular year, we have gotten 30 inches of rain since the rain started in May. You can actually find a CB Pacific Realty weather station if you would like to find more information and keep up to date with the temperature, precipitation, and humidity. I will post the link to that in the description of this video once I'm done and remember to do it. But so in this year, we've had an incredibly strong start to the rainy season. That 30 inches of rain in May and June, there are years I have photos where even as of June, the countryside is still brown and dry, and we really haven't emerged out of the dry season and are still waiting on heavy rains. I am not a meteorologist, so I won't attempt to explain exactly all of the factors at work, but what has been really affecting us this year are a series of tropical depressions, these low pressure zones that, and rather, all of the enormous weather activity that actually happens on the other side of Costa Rica in the Caribbean. And when they get, I think it's a low pressure zone on that side of the country, or when a low pressure zone blows over Costa Rica, you end up sucking in water from the Pacific, and you can have absolutely torrential rains much earlier in the rainy season. About 100 years ago, we received about twice as much annual average rainfall as we do today. There used to be somewhere between 130 to 170 inches of annual rain, even in Guanacaste, the driest part of Costa Rica, because there's a much broader drying trend that has happened, really, that was responsible for some of the water problems we're hearing about in areas north of where I live. There were definite shortages of water in years where we saw the opposite effect. In 2015, for example, we had a massive El Nino phenomenon in the Pacific Ocean. El Nino, I believe, is when the surface of the Pacific warms up. Again, I'm not a meteorologist, but when we had El Nino in 2015, we got a total of 44 inches for the entire year. That still sounds like plenty of rain, but remember, we're on June 22nd here, and we've received 30 inches so far because this is a strong year. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, that there is that enormous variability. You can have very strong rainy seasons where very early on we're almost to a meter of rain. You can have droughts where we're desperate to get any rain by the end of the season, and really we only get big storms in those months of September and October. It'll be interesting to see where the total rainfall ends up for this year, given that we've already had 30 inches since May. September and October could be pretty wild given what we've seen so far. So, if you're looking for the driest part of Costa Rica, Guanacaste is absolutely it. If you want to try and be, in the greener parts of Guanacaste, the further south you come down towards Nosara and Samara, they even see more rainfall than we do up here near Tamarindo. And we're talking about a geographical distance that's really not that significant. It takes only an hour, hour and a half to drive down to Nosara. And already at that spot in the peninsula, you're in a different life zone. There's different vegetation down there because their rainy season is longer, usually includes more rain than we see up here in Tamarindo. And conversely, if you went an hour north of Tamarindo, further up the coast, you would see that the very northwestern extremity of Costa Rica is drier still than what we see down in our area. So it's essentially this smooth gradient where you could pick about how much rainfall you want to deal with and really focus on trying to find one of those drier areas where you get that stark season from December all the way through April normally. Or, if you want to be living in a lush tropical paradise and really have that rainforest feel, you need to go south. Nosara is still dry tropical forest, but definitely beginning to be more of a rainforest. If you went off the Guanacaste Peninsula and down to the Central Pacific and the Southern Pacific, then you see significantly more rain. The dry season is shorter. You really don't get a huge break and that long dry period that we see up here. And for a lot of people, that sounds absolutely amazing. I want to wake up with the sound of raindrops. I want to really feel like I live in that, Isla Sorna or whatever from Jurassic Park. But a lot of people spend a year living there. And when they've had a couple, months where they've received 30, 40, or 50 inches of rain every month, it starts to get a little bit old. And definitely what they don't have down in the very southern parts of the country is that stretch of really dry weather with low relative humidity. Lots of people love visiting Guanacaste from January to April because during that time, yes, the countryside is generally speaking brown. We have a deciduous forest in our area. The trees lose their leaves, the pastures go dry, and it looks more like Northern California or Arkansas here than you would imagine a tropical, lush country. And that time of year is absolutely spectacular for spending time at the beach. There's never going to be any rain in those months. The relative humidity being low is a huge blessing because really, I think people don't anticipate just how oppressive super humid weather can be. Personally, I love Guanacaste's green season. To me, it's really a relief after having gone through the dry season to see everything come back to life and immediately burst into green. But in a heavy year, when we're getting 80 to 100 inches of rain, by the time it's November, everybody in Guanacaste, or most of us, are ready to see some dry weather again. And December usually comes as an enormous relief to us when we've gone through that kind of rainy season. Again, it's not every year. There are many where we barely get rain until August, September, October, or we just get a few showers here and there. 2022 is different. We're definitely getting good amounts of rain. As I mentioned, 30 inches so far as of June 22nd. And I'm sure if I look through my data, I can find years where we've had less than 5 inches of rain by this time in the year. Where climate change is taking us, who knows? But there's definitely some more crazy variability with these stark contrasts between different years, where we do have huge droughts and huge rainy seasons rather than more predictable rainfall patterns. Let me give you some general tips to get ready for the rainy season, and then we'll take a short break to take a look at my newest exclusive listing, and a beautiful ocean view lot in a slightly rainier place than where I live here down by San Juanillo. My number one tip for surviving Guanacaste's rainy season is to be here in the rainy season before you buy property. It sounds very logical, but there are so many people who only visit during the dry season or one half of the year or the other before purchasing property. And really, they have no anticipation of what it will be like when we go from absolute bone dry March weather to deluges in September. And it can be pretty shocking. I have clients who just sold a property that is across a river from the main road. They had purchased it without any knowledge that the river ever got above, a certain level, 6 inches. I think, in fact, that they didn't really even understand that there was a river, because during the dry season, you could be driving down a road, go through what feels like a little gully and come out the other side and not really notice the fact that, yeah, there's a huge drainage that comes across the road at this juncture. Those folks had a rude awakening the first September they lived there, and found out that, yeah, that river gets pretty big when there are huge rainstorms. And in fact, you have to wait to leave the community for the river to go down after those enormous deluges of rain. There are lots of people who have also, purchased property that they haven't seen tested by rain. They haven't ever been around when it was flowing around the property. And very much that can bring a lot of surprises as well. Shout out to Brian and Bernadette, who are discovering all of this as we speak. So more than anything, if you want to adequately prepare yourself for the rainy season, come down for a trip. It can be pretty dreary weather, but look at September or October if you're really considering an investment here. Check out the property that you're interested in or the community during that time of year, and try and get there at a rainy point so you can really get a visualization of what's going on and understand what you're getting yourself into. If you're not able to make a trip down in the rainy season, I understand that happens. Of course, do force your realtor, your developer, all of the people involved with that location, force them to tell you what the rainy season is like, and get a lot of perspectives from people who have lived there for a long time. And they might be able to tell you all kinds of useful tidbits about where water runs, which properties are vulnerable to flooding, and try and pick their brains for as much information as possible. Because if you're here in the dry season, you really are getting no information about what things will look like for half of the year. Another general tip is to buy a car that is adequate for the rainy season in your area. I also see people moving down who have based their expectation of what they need for a car on the dry season. And the rainy season brings a whole slew of challenges. And specifically, you may have 1, 2, or 3 creeks that you have to cross to get to your property or to visit friends, this, that, and the other. Your car needs to be adequate to deal with the challenges of the rainy season, get through those creeks, etc. And so whereas you might live on a highway here and look at a property, let's say in Playas del Coco, and think that, oh, I can get by with a sedan because there's so much concrete around here. Well, if you plan on exploring Costa Rica and you want to live here in the rainy season, that sedan may just not cut it. So absolutely think of investing in a bigger, higher vehicle. Honestly, most don't actually need to be 4x4. I haven't used my 4x4 in years, and I go across plenty of creeks. I drive up muddy hills, down them all around, but I'm doing so in a big, powerful car. Big, powerful car. It's not like I'm, really playing that up. Finally, 2 more tips, generally speaking, to survive the rainy season here. First, you need to understand the rivers and don't just plunge headfirst into them thinking that they must be shallow. I'll have Danielle put up another picture that is a frequent sight here in Guanacaste in the rainy season, and it's the cars of tourists in rivers. Now, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's not just tourists. That's definitely a tourist that we're seeing on screen now, I would say, or a foreigner with that kind of SUV. But people have no idea what the river is like. And, looking at it from one side or the other, you may estimate that, I can probably just plow through this thing. And, recently in the month of early June, when we had the bulk of this 30 inches of rain, the site that you're seeing, I think that's even, that's a different area, but we frequently see cars getting stuck in the river that goes to, that crosses the road on your way to Ostional, the wildlife refuge. It was basically a daily occurrence that the local news would be posting videos of people either trying to cross the river, getting stuck, or some of them miraculously making it through. I saw some really cool clips where you thought the car was going to get swept down the river, and just at the last second, they get traction and hauled out. I actually fell victim to this complete ignorance, or rather, I was completely ignorant in 2009 and went for a horseback ride just after a lot of rain had fallen. My host father even said to me several times, there's been a lot of rain in the last few days. Are you sure you want to take your horse down to Junquillal? And I said, oh, yeah. I've got a poncho. I have my umbrella. I am completely prepared for this. And my horse and I got to a waterway that I thought looked pretty manageable. I figured, well, there's a road through this, so there's no way that this could be that deep. We started wading in. Pretty soon the horse was swimming. I was panicking. The current was bad. My poncho, my umbrella, all of that stuff got washed away downstream. And, I nearly had a huge accident trying to haul this horse out of the river. I was horribly inexperienced riding. And I had literally just looked at this creek and figured, oh, it can't be that bad. I'm on a horse. Let's just plow through this. So do listen to local advice and pay attention to what the true depth of the river is. Do not be ashamed if you're here in the rainy season and you pull up to a river to just sit there and wait and let somebody else come up and try and go through the river before you just go plowing through. Even with as many years as I've lived here, I still do this when I'm driving around. Just pull up and park, let somebody else take the risk. And hopefully some local will come by and, they know the way across the river, and you'll be able to see that it's navigable or crossable. And if nobody comes, if the water is brown, turn around is a saying that you hear here in Guanacaste. That brown water means that sediments washing down from the hillside, which means it was a recent rain and things have not calmed down. And if the height of the water or the velocity is strong enough to carry sediment, it's evidence that the water is deep. Clear water, generally speaking, is easier, shallower, and it's evidence that the rain has, diminished its impact up above you. Brown, if it's brown, turn around. One last general tip I want to give. In Guanacaste, these are the only adequate shoe to last you the entire rainy season if you want to have a lot of fun exploring outdoors. These rubber boots are available ubiquitously in local stores. And if you've just moved down to Costa Rica, they can be the key to your happiness, because when we get into the flow of the rainy season and it's every single day, there's mud everywhere. There's no way to leave your house without getting mud on your shoes. You'll get stuff stuck in the mud. It can really be a pain to try and be happy living in the rainy season without a pair of these. And they're absolutely the right vehicle for your feet to get through the rainy season here. They're cheap. They come in all sizes. Get yourself a few pairs so you can put one at the back door, one at the front door, one out by the garden. Just have boots everywhere so that you don't have to deal with ruining all of your shoes with Guanacaste's mud. Let's talk, before we go on to a few tips for building your home to withstand rain, I want to take a short break here, possibly go get a beverage, and show you my newest exclusive listing. If you're looking for an absolutely massive lot with a bigger view, if you're looking at real estate down south of us and you're interested in the Nosara area or San Juanillo and Marbella, this new listing would be the absolute perfect home site. It's in a wonderful gated community called Finca Los Sueños. They have a huge 86-acre nature reserve in the community, and Los Sueños has its own water source. They have an asada that is run by the community. Danielle, hit it. This view could be yours. Imagine living here in the hills above Nosara, Costa Rica. Welcome. Ocean view property near Nosara is absolutely priceless right now in the Guanacaste real estate market. I'm standing here at my newest exclusive listing, a 2.7 acre lot that measures 10,959 square meters with one of the most epic ocean views available on Guanacaste's coastline. If you've taken a Costa Rica real estate tour in search of ocean view property, you've probably been frustrated by all kinds of realtors who will present a beautiful ocean view property where really the view doesn't live up to the expectation. This lot is absolutely not in that category. As you can see behind me, from the building site here on this absolutely massive property, you have a spectacular 200+ degree view of the Pacific Ocean. You can see waves crashing down below us. You can see south toward the Ostional Wildlife Refuge and up the north coastline back towards Tamarindo. This is an absolutely spectacular view, and few properties in Costa Rica offer you that view with such a large building terrace. Most often you're seeing very small chunks of land where you have to make an extremely steep cut in order to be able to build. Not at all the case as well here, where you have an immense flat space here at the top of this hill for building multiple homes even, and including the perfect spot for an infinity pool down below you, looking out towards your gorgeous view. The location couldn't be more ideal. You're situated just to the north of the Ostional Wildlife Refuge, where you see one of the natural wonders of the world in the arrivals of massive numbers of Pacific sea turtles every year. You're just a little bit further north of Nosara, one of Guanacaste's most booming tourism hubs, a place that's grown quickly over the last decade, where you have incredible surf breaks, all kinds of amenities, private schools, restaurants, on and on. And you're just south of San Juanillo, which is a charming Costa Rican town that really still hasn't seen too much development, and Playa Marbella, one of Guanacaste's best surf breaks. Moreover, you're located inside the Finca Los Sueños gated community, which is special for two big reasons. First of all, they have their own water resource, and it can't be emphasized enough in Guanacaste what a big asset that is, that they have their own asada and control over their water. Second of all, in addition to roping off a large green space to conserve a section of the forest here, Los Sueños has a lot of folks who have already built their homes. You see enormous investment in the community. This isn't one of the neighborhoods that got to 2010 and then paused. You see that this is a community where neighbors are continually investing in the quality of their roads, the infrastructure, and ensuring their security. So this property combines the best of what Costa Rica has to offer. You've got the Pacific Ocean view right behind me. You have a wonderful community with neighbors here living in the mountains, and you have access to Guanacaste's best natural wonders, whether they're turtles or beaches. If you want to know more about this listing, send me an email to matt@cbpacificrealty.com. As of June 2022, this lot has an asking price of $750,000. Thanks for watching. And we're back. I'm realizing everyone may think that I only have one shirt since I was in the same garb in that video. I promise I do have multiple shirts, and next week I will wear my gray one to prove it. Let's move on to some tips for building your home to withstand Guanacaste's rainy season, and really designing your property to make sure that you can accommodate those big rainy seasons. You know, like I was discussing with the huge variability involved in Guanacaste, you might come down one year and design a home based on a light rainfall year. It obviously needs to be prepared for those years where we do get 150 inches or more of rain in a torrential season. So first of all, one of the things that I wanted to mention was building a home with huge eaves in every direction. A lot of people want to move to Guanacaste. Excuse me. And by the way, this is my beverage. I'm still playing it responsibly here. They want to have a very open concept. They want to preserve their views, and they want to try and have as much of the forest around them as possible. You really need to consider that even though it's rarely windy in our rainy seasons, in fact, really the only wind that we see is during the dry season here. When it's pouring buckets to the level that it can get here in Guanacaste, water is absolutely everywhere. And suddenly that beautiful terrace that you did extending out past your house can get all kinds of water on it, splashing back really just bouncing in every direction. As one example, we got 24 inches of rain in 2 days. I think it was in 2019. It was some kind of tropical storm that was blowing over the Caribbean. And that 24 inches of rain was like stepping out into a pool. The water was just coming down in such quantities that really I wish my house had far more roof lines extending out in every direction than it currently does. In fact, I'm providing this tip from experience. We have really high ceilings in sort of our forest cabin design home with huge open spaces to allow air to flow through when it's hot. But when we moved in, we quickly found out, for example, that clear story, the space between our two roof lines where we get great airflow, it only has a 30-inch roof going off the back side of it. And during the rainy season, all of a sudden, we had a ton of water coming back through that clear story. And pretty soon we had to buy windows to fill up that space and keep ourselves out of the rain when it was really pouring down. The next really big thing to consider is how you're going to drain this water or allow it away from your property, and really how you're going to manage those huge quantities of water. Again, it's a question where you don't want to have to spend too much for these crazy situations, but at the same time, you have to be prepared for that night that 24 inches of rain could fall in a couple days. One of the things that we've done at my house to mitigate some of the water, that was kind of a clever solution. The gutters from the entire front of our house come into a single downspout, and that downspout pumps water into a pond where basically all of the runoff from our roof, and we have a big, slanted roof, drains into a pond. I'll ask Danielle to play a quick clip of what that looks like. It's not... And here you can see the tube from our gutters draining into the pond. This was actually earlier today. We were enjoying a nice, really solid rain here. It actually interrupted. There you can see the tube a little bit better. That actually interrupted the first day of blue skies that we've had in a long time. That's a pretty quirky solution, but what that does is essentially take a huge amount of water and put it somewhere to at least then be collected. And as the pond overflows, everything is then just spreading out over the areas around it. And we don't have to worry about that concentrated, really bad runoff from our roof. A second, another really important concept in designing your property, if you can't necessarily mitigate with gutters going into a pond like I've shown, you just need to plan your landscaping so that where water naturally runs, it's allowed to run out rather than coming back towards your house. And really, when you're designing your property and thinking about where you're going to position the home, how you're going to manage rainfall, etc., you might consider locating your house, on a little knoll where you really don't have to worry about runoff from other properties. Speaking of runoff, I want to show a quick clip how not to prepare. And you do see people here who cut very steep incline slopes and essentially have no plan for dealing with the water running down. You can assume that the more direct, straight slope that you allow water to run down, the bigger problem you are going to create. And here, give a quick shout out to my wife for grabbing this clip on her way home. And also a big shout out to my assistant, Danielle, for treating us to the mirror situation that you'll see on her car, which was Danielle's way of getting out of driving our car for the rest of his life. Here you're seeing unmitigated runoff coming down a driveway there that was done completely without thought as to how the runoff would be eventually controlled. You could see that brown water carrying loads of sediment down, doing damage to the road and really creating problems because that home was designed really without thinking of how the runoff would be managed. How can you manage runoff here in Costa Rica? Well, one of the easiest tools that we have available are bumps and contour lines that you can create where you can sculpt a property so that water is moved off rather than being allowed to just plow down the hill. You can create these bumps using plants to hold up the soil if you don't have to drive over them. One of the plants that I highly, highly recommend is vetiver grass. It's a species that is native to India. Vetiver is an ornamental that you would see lots of people planting here around their homes because it's got a lovely style. And vetiver grass has roots that go down into the soil something like 15 to 20 feet after only a couple years of growing. So they're incredibly good at controlling erosion, and you can use vetiver grass once you've sculpted the land to hold up all of those landscape features so that, if you build a bump, it looks nice and it can be pretty and work for a little while. But if there are no plants actually holding that soil together, well, yeah, the next rainy season that we get that's hard, the water is eventually going to wash away your bump and you will be fully exposed again to the effects of that runoff. Like I said, you can do bumps without vetiver grass and use them to protect road infrastructure. I'm trying to see if we have that clip as well. Uh-oh, I didn't upload my diversion bumps clip here. We'll get that going as I chat just a little bit more. But essentially the concept, if you're trying to protect a road or even a sidewalk, any sort of path that you need to stay open, the key is to not let water just run all the way down without anything stopping it, as we saw in the clip with all the mud running down the hill. Here, we're going to see a very simple diversion bump concept where runoff coming down one of the roads in our neighborhood is pushed off to the side of the road at one of these bumps. And what that does is that instead of gaining force and, more water coalescing as the road goes on, it keeps pushing water off so that the gullying is kept to a minimum. And so that, rather than torrential amounts flowing down any one single path, you're able to manage it. Here's a diversion bump. So here you can see the water in those various little veins running down to the bump, and then it's pushed off to the side of the road into the woods along this bump, which is a very simple feature. Driving over them, yes, is a little bit of a pain because they're speed bumps. At the same time, it's nice to have people driving slower, especially when you have a 7 and 5-year-old doing their best to just go crazy all the time. And these bumps, I guarantee, are spectacular at preserving a road over the long term. If we didn't have 8, I think we'd probably have a dozen or 15 bumps in our neighborhood. our roads would all be gullied and end up just in terrible condition year after year. With the bumps, yeah, we still get gullying and there are issues, but it's far less. And in general, the road infrastructure stays in a lot better condition because we're pushing off the water. So essentially, those diversion bumps should be built on a contour as well, which is contrary to the flow of water. It's a pretty easy concept to get. There's all kinds of resources online talking about rainwater management. And when you're thinking of your property here in Costa Rica, if you're able to come down in October and take a look at your undeveloped lot during a huge rainstorm, you can pretty quickly see where the water is moving, where it's going to cause damage, where it's accumulating too much, where it's stagnant, etc. And you can start to conceptualize how you're going to deal with that so that the rainy season doesn't just turn into a destructive nightmare for your property. Finally, I just want to give a couple tips about preparing your property for the rainy season here. One of the big obvious ones is to clean out your gutters. And this is currently, my gutters are probably chock full of all kinds of junk. The amount, especially in Guanacaste, which again is a deciduous forest, you have an incredible amount of organic material that will fall in your gutters throughout the year. And not just leaves, you will get big seeds, all kinds of different things that clog up your gutter. And you don't want to find out that the gutter is blocked up during your first torrential rain. Excuse me. La Croix is very bubbly. You want to be prepared so that when that torrential rain comes the first time, it can just flow out your gutters. And if you are the owner of a home with property around it, you also need to keep up and make sure that those drainages that you've set up around your lot have not filled up with sediment over the last year. You saw brown water flowing down a driveway in that video. All of that sediment is accumulating in a plume down below that has now filled up a drain that's supposed to help water flow out. And it causes major problems, essentially ensuring that nothing is draining and instead you're getting flood conditions. So really, in late April, before those first rains come, you need to get outside, get that ladder up. I'm giving a pep talk to myself. Clean out those gutters, make sure that all of your drains are ready to go. Check down on the ground, look at where water normally runs. And it's not just that you set up your landscape once and forget about it forever. It will most likely require maintenance where you have to get in there with a shovel, dig out the sediment, and make sure that everything is ready to flow for the rainy season. It has been a sincere pleasure, as always, joining you for this live Costa Rica chat with Costa Rica Matt. Next week, June 29th, is the last chat of the month, which means it's time for our monthly Q&A roundup. My studious assistant, Danielle, will go through all of the videos that we've had over the last month. The poor guy has to go back and watch stuff again. And he'll compile questions to go over that you, my lovely viewers, have submitted in either the live chat or the comments of the video afterwards. We'll get to as many as we can. We'll try and pick those choice questions that'll really bring up some thought-provoking conversation. I'll also try to handle questions live next Wednesday. Usually we don't have enough time, or I don't have enough energy to get to those live questions submitted next week. So be sure to submit your comments right now, those questions that you want Costa Rica Matt to address. I'll see you next week, Wednesday, June 29th, again at 7 p.m. Costa Rica time, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you very much and have a good night.